Hello, welcome back to my kitchen at the Elliott Family Farm. Today is Monday and it is my meal prep day. So I'd like to invite you along to spend a little bit of time with me as I meal prep for the week. So when I start meal prepping, I don't like to do everything. I don't like to overload myself with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I like to just pick a couple things. Like if I can get breakfasts meal prepped for the week, I consider that a win. I love to be able to have snacks on hand for kiddos. I love to be able to have like a meal prepped, like for dinner. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So today I decided I was going to make a big batch of egg salad. My kiddos are going through a phase of really liking hard-boiled eggs, and so I have a ton in my fridge, and I decided to hard-boil a bunch of them up, not only for them to have as snacks, but then to create a nice high-protein meal that we could have just as a grab and go for breakfast or a couple scoops here and there for an after-school snack. It's just a good, well-versatile option. I don't make egg salad enough, and every time I do make it, I tell myself I need to make it more, and then I don't know, incidentally something happens and I just get out of the habit. But having my Instapot to hard boil the eggs is really fantastic. It takes 6 minutes for them to come to a perfect temperature, and then the shells just peel off of them so easily. It is really your best tool as far as hard boiling eggs. So I really like my egg salad to just be fairly plain, simple flavors. A little Dijon, some mayonnaise, salt and pepper, and then I add a little bit of lemon juice or pickle juice to it. I had a handful of jars of pickles that no longer had the juice in it because I had used it for the dill pickle sourdough. So I wanted to get a couple of those used up before they dried out. So as I am mixing up this mixture for my egg salad, I realize that I am out of ranch dressing. Ranch dressing is something that is just a staple in my fridge. I love to keep a jar of it ready at all times because not only is it good for a quick dip for vegetables or whatever after school, but having it ready for a salad, for dinner, meal prep is always handy. I don't like to purchase store-bought dressings at all just because of all the extra ingredients that are added to them. Dressings are one of the easiest things to make at home. And if you are new to scratch-made cooking, I definitely suggest trying your hand at your favorite couple dressings. Like a ranch dressing's easy, an Italian dressing's easy, and then you can kind of morph from there. I definitely cheat a little bit with this one and add some ranch powder, which, yes, has extra stuff that I don't particularly care for. However, you got to give a little bit. It's one of my convenience items that 3/4 of this is homemade, and I know exactly what goes into it. And sometimes having those little bit of convenience items is worth it, and I still consider it a scratch-made item. So I do always add extra herbs. I dry all of my own herbs from my garden and keep them in containers separately, and then wind up mixing my own mixture of Italian dressing or Italian seasonings or whatever else I need as I need it. I feel like it stays fresher that way. And then if I need to just have parsley or just have oregano, I have those on hand. So I like to make this dressing in just my wide mouth mason jar. I fill everything in, and then I take my immersion blender and whip it up. This makes everything so easy, no need to dirty an extra bowl, and I do wind up adjusting the lemon juice in here because we like it a little tangier, but there you go, ranch done. So next up is some bread. I need to get some dough rising. I go back and forth between making sourdough a lot and then just doing a quick rise yeasted bread. Today, I didn't want to wait for the proofing and the overnight ferment. I just wanted to get some bread cooked and ready to go for sandwiches, for lunches, for my kiddos. And I had planned on doing grilled cheese and soup one day, so I wanted to just have this ready to rock. I If you are starting out a scratch kitchen or starting to learn to cook from scratch, bread is one of the things that you can definitely benefit from. It does not have to be complicated. It can be the simplest recipe. And once you master a skill like bread, you can open so many doors to other things, whether it be more complicated recipes or just being able to have that one thing that is scratch made in your kitchen. Makes me feel so comforted to have homemade bread in my pantry. I also really love to double my batches whenever I'm making bread, just because it's just as easy to make two as it is one. And I can always use it, whether it be breadcrumbs, if it winds up not getting eaten fresh, or I can turn a loaf of bread that is maybe not as great for sandwiches. I can make it into French toast or whatever. The options are endless. So this is actually that pickle sourdough that my family did not like. I am turning this into breadcrumbs. I'm going to cube it and then pop it on a sheet pan just on low. And then I do spritz a little avocado oil on it and just let it bake away and dry out in my oven while I'm doing other things. And then I will go ahead and pulse this up in the blender and have some delicious breadcrumbs. I can tell you that the flavor that the pickle and the vinegar imparted on the breadcrumbs was really delicious. I think it's going to go great for like a meatloaf or chicken cutlets or anything like that. I think having those little flavors in a smaller dose is just better for my family. So nothing goes to waste around here. I always find some other way to use it. So that's what's going on with this. I have some extra hard-boiled eggs that I just released the steam on in the pot behind me just for snacks. And then soon here, I'm going to go ahead and chop up the hard-boiled eggs to finish up our egg salad. This has about 15 eggs in it, I believe. And this was the perfect amount to make enough egg salad for this bowl and then also have a couple of them left over for kiddos to just snack on. This little tray that the Instapot comes with, at least my Instapot came with it, is a life changer when it comes to making hard-boiled eggs. I never used to use it because I didn't know what it was. And then I saw somebody on YouTube using it one time and realized, oh, putting the eggs on top of here gets them off the bottom of the pot. So when the pot is coming to pressure, it's not making the eggs bounce. I kept having trouble with egg shells cracking. And yes, inevitably, a couple of them did crack in this, but it's not nearly as bad as when you have the eggs basically bouncing on the bottom of the Instapot while they're pressurizing, and then you wind up with just an eggy mess. So this little thing is fantastic, and I highly suggest getting one if your Instapot did not come with one. The eggshells just peel off of these so smoothly. As you can see, they just basically fall right out. That is one of the best things about the Instapot, is that it creates the perfect temperature for eggs to be able to cook and then have that membrane release, so there is no mess with peeling the eggs. So out comes my chopper and my helper. We're going to see how this works with, well, I can tell you it works fine. It's messy though. I don't know if I'll do this again because of how messy it was. Just as far as the eggs being hot, perhaps if the eggs were cooler, it would work better, but we wanted to get this done, and I wanted to put the warm eggs into my dressing mix for my egg salad because it creates a little bit creamier of a texture when those yolks get nice and warm and mashed up. So we went ahead and went with it. It did dice them up to a pretty decent size. And then once I gave it a couple stirs with the eggs being warm, it broke it up just a little bit more. So it actually wound up being a perfect size for what I needed. It, like I said, just wound up creating a little bit of a mess on that chopper grate, but nothing that a little soapy water could not handle. My little helper here needed to have some taste tests and just any chance he can get in to help me. He loves it, and I love having him in the kitchen. So once these all get chopped up, we're going to go ahead and dump the eggs into the dressing to finish up our egg salad. And this turned out, as you can see, the great. The chopper is a little bit messy, but for the most part, it worked great. I was actually really surprised, honestly, at how much this container can hold. When I was researching these choppers, I had messaged one of my friends who has one and asked what size hers was because hers looked so big. And the one that I was going to order looked pretty small, but this one actually holds a lot. And if you're interested in this one, I can link it below. I'm pretty happy with this, and I definitely use it as much as I can. So anyhow, egg salad turns out fantastic. Went ahead and just gave this a good mix. And then, like I said before, I added a little bit of garlic powder, onion powder, paprika to it, just to give it a little bit more pizzazz. And then let this cool and popped it in the fridge. And we have yet another thing completed off of our meal prep list. So back to bread. I have my yeast proofing here. I like to weigh out my ingredients. I know some people do this by cups. I prefer, once I started weighing my ingredients out, I definitely prefer to weigh my ingredients out. It can sound a little daunting at first, but once you get used to it, it really does create a more accurate measurement. And it's just as easy to watch the number on the scale and then tear it out every time you need to add something new versus, counting your cups. I definitely have seen a difference in measurements being out of whack when you just do it by cups and tablespoons versus weighing it. So, especially when it comes to baking, this is typically the route that I go. So, I don't have a mixer that needs dough, and I don't have a dough hook for my KitchenAid. My KitchenAid's super old, and so I don't have one that will fit on it. So what I do, whether I'm making sourdough or a yeasted loaf, is I just do my stretch and folds. It works fantastic to create a nice gluten structure in the dough, and I don't have to worry about the mixer or anything like that. So I just wind up giving it a mix till it's a shaggy dough, and then I let it sit, and then 30 minutes later, we'll go ahead and start some stretch and folds. So now we're on to some wheat grinding for my waffles. My kids love having waffles in the morning. It's such an easy school morning breakfast. I usually triple my batch of waffles and then just freeze them in freezer bags, and the kids can just pop them out, cut them in half or break them in half, put them in the toaster to warm up, and it is super easy for them to do. So this is a mixture of einkorn and soft white wheat, and then I do add 2 cups of all-purpose flour just to add a little bit more structure to this and make them a little bit fluffier. I didn't want these to be super dense. I have definitely done 100% fresh milled waffles, and it turns out fine, but I just decided to not wait to grind that much wheat today. I love adding pumpkin pie seasoning to my waffles. It is out of the ordinary, but it creates such a delicious flavor. And then when you add, butter or syrup or peanut butter to your waffles, it just adds a little bit extra flavor, and I really love it. My family loves it. So that's kind of my go-to flavoring for my waffles. I also like to use brown sugar instead of regular sugar because it winds up giving them a little bit more of a chew. Now, you'll see here later, so with fresh milled flour, I should say, there's a learning curve. You definitely have to do some research, and I can link the book that I learned a lot of my knowledge on when it comes to fresh milled flour below. Grains in Small Places is the channel that Kara Birch runs, and she is a wealth of knowledge, and I really do love just listening to her and learning. I've learned a ton from listening to her YouTube channel and reading her book. So one of the things that is key with fresh milled flour is before you cook it, you have to let it hydrate. So with these waffles, I go ahead and mix the majority of my ingredients in here. We're going to add avocado oil, some vanilla, salt, and then my pumpkin pie seasonings. And then I let it sit. I add the milk until it is a thick consistency, and then let it sit for about 30 minutes. And then you'll see in a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and add more milk and thin it out. And then it's going to wind up creating a delicious batter that is easy to pour into my waffle iron and creates a scrumptious fresh milled waffle. So next on the docket, we are doing some kind of a take on a Spanish rice. I decided to make enchiladas for dinner tonight, but I didn't want to make a salsa verde or red enchilada sauce. I wanted to do this creamy garlic white sauce that I keep seeing that sounded really delicious. So I'm getting some rice going in my Instapot. It is also one of my favorite ways to cook rice. It turns out perfect every single time. So we're going to add, as you can see here, my waffle batter is thick, and I remedy this situation shortly after making one or two of these, realizing that as soon as I added, it's that fresh milled wheat. I just was rushed and I did not hydrate the dough well enough, or the batter per se. And then after, as you can see here, I thinned it out and I made it so much better. So we have a crispy exterior and we still have a super fluffy, delightful interior to these waffles. So I definitely need to remember to err on the thinner batter side instead of the thicker batter side, just because I tend to rush myself and I need to slow down. So here we go with the dough again. This is that sandwich bread. Like I said, I just go ahead and do stretch and folds, and it creates a beautiful gluten structure. Every 20 minutes or so, when I remember, I will do a set of stretch and folds, and then in between that time, it rises and it's doing its thing while I do other things. So my Spanish rice is basically done. I added some spinach in here to add a little bit of a veg to my enchiladas. And one of the fun things about having this like meal prep situation going on is I wound up making about 3 cups more rice than I needed to. And so once I filled my enchiladas, I was able to just have a little bit of extra rice, and we were able to use that as lunch prep for myself and my little while the kiddos were at school one day. 2 birds, 1 stone. So again, cheating with the rotisserie chicken. I don't particularly consider it cheating, but at the same time, I really do love being able to have the convenience of it already cooked. So go ahead and peel the meat off the bones, and then I will go ahead and save the carcass for broth as soon as I have enough, and we'll have another broth making day. So this chicken is going to double as meal prep for enchiladas, as well as just extra in a Ziploc bag in the fridge for snacking. I can make a quick chicken salad if somebody needs a lunch or some sort of a high protein snack after school. Super easy and super versatile. I really love having chicken that's pre-cooked in my fridge so that I can have options whenever I need it. So this chicken is just going to get diced up. This recipe, the filling of these enchiladas is kind of being made up. I usually do like a cheesy, saucy kind of enchilada, but I had inspiration from a Mexican restaurant that I used to go to a long, long time ago that made these amazing spinach enchiladas. And they had this delightful, creamy white sauce over the top of it with avocado and all kinds of deliciousness. And I just kept thinking about that. But my family needs some high protein, so we're going to add chicken. We're going to go ahead and jump to my fire cider. We brewed this together about 3 weeks ago, and it was time to strain. So I went ahead and strained it out, and just going to jar this up. It creates about 1.5 quarts, little heavy half, and I'm just going to pop this in the fridge, and then anytime somebody feels sick, you take about 1 ounce or 2 of it, and you can just use this daily. You can use this when you feel icky, or you can just keep it in the fridge, and it is a great go-to for immune support. So these breadcrumbs are done. This was the pickle sourdough that nobody liked in my family. So I left these in the oven until they got to be a nice crispy texture. And then my blender is absolutely fantastic for pulsing this kind of stuff up, more so than my food processor. You can use a food processor for sure, but if you have a high-powered blender, that would be my appliance of choice. It gets a nice fine breadcrumb, and then I just wind up putting these in a Ziploc bag and pop them in the freezer until I need it. So here we go, assembly line of the enchiladas. So I have about a cup of chicken, about a cup of the rice with a half a cup of the rice and the spinach, a little sprinkle of mozzarella cheese, and then roll these babies up and line them in a pan. And this is super easy, super quick dinner. I wound up making 2 pans of this so that I can have one for tonight and then one for the freezer. Whenever we need a quick meal, I can just remember to take it out, pop it in a pan, and then we can have dinner ready to go. These turned out fantastic. My family loved them. My husband said he would prefer this particular sauce recipe to my traditional salsa verde, which was great. I thought they turned out fantastic also, and it was super easy. So easy meal prep, easy extra meal for a different day, and I was so happy with how these turned out. This white sauce, I basically just made a roux and then added some sour cream, some garlic, and some pepper, and then just kind of adjusted it to a creamy garlic consistency. There is cumin in this also, just a little bit. It's not overpowering by any means, but you can definitely taste the Mexican flavor in it. And then this is the one that I'm going to put in the freezer. I don't like to freeze my actual glass pans, so I line it with parchment. And then once the enchilada are frozen, I will pop the parchment part out of the glass pan and put it in a freezer safe bag and then vacuum seal that. And then when I'm ready to cook it, I will go ahead and just remove the parchment and pop it back into this same glass pan to heat up. I'm going to top this one with green onions to freeze, and then as soon as my other one bakes, I will top that with green onions before we serve. So let's get this dough ready to rock. It slides out of this bowl so easy. You can see the gluten structure is so strong in this. These turned out fantastic. I really love when I can make a quick yeasted bread and it turns out great, and I don't have to wait for the proofing process or, the cold ferment. It's really just instant gratification. I do my same sort of shaping as I would do with sourdough. With this particular loaf, you want to create tension over the top and then just kind of roll and pull it towards you. If you do wind up with anything a little bit sticky, you just want to wet your hands. Don't add flour. So like I said, I'm going to make 2 loaves with this. I am going to use one loaf pan, my typical loaf pan, and then the other one I'm going to put in my Pullman pan. If you've never used a Pullman pan before, they are really neat. It is a square pan that has, it's a rectangle pan that has a lid. And so when you put your dough in the Pullman pan, you shape it and pop it in there with the parchment exactly like you would any other loaf pan. But this one, you're going to go ahead and put the lid on, and then you bake it like normal, and you wind up with a perfectly square loaf of bread. It cuts beautifully once they're done. It is a great way to have your bread remain soft on the outside. So it does have a browned crust, but it doesn't get crispy and crunchy like a artisan loaf would. So fantastic for sandwiches. A great option to have instead of a bowl or instead of just in a loaf pan. I wish I had a bigger one. honestly. This one is, I believe this one's 7 inches. I know you can get them in 9 and 12. I will definitely be investing in a bigger one soon. Investing is the wrong word. They're not expensive, but I will definitely be buying a bigger one soon because the bigger the loaf, I think would be better for my family, which is a family of 5. So we do create a lot of sandwiches. So next on the docket, last on the docket, I should say, is breakfast burritos. I love to have breakfast burritos cooked for my family for the mornings. My husband takes one every single day for work. He takes a breakfast and a lunch that I make him every day, and he just pops these breakfast burritos in the microwave and heats them up for 30 seconds on each side. Super quick, super hearty, homemade breakfast. I know he's not grabbing donuts or something icky from a Quickie Mart. He's got a hearty breakfast made from home, and it makes my heart happy. So my family is very basic when it comes to breakfast burritos. We like eggs, ham, and cheese. Super simple. So it makes my life easy when I have to make a whole bunch of these. I don't have to do anything complicated. So I do love just wrapping these up in a paper towel, and then I wrap them in foil after that once they've cooled. And then my husband uses the foil as a quote unquote plate, and then is able to use the paper towel to heat them up in the microwave without spilling any juices or creating a mess. It works perfect. So I do wind up making about 8 or 9 of these, and they last about a week. My oldest has been liking breakfast burritos also, so it's great to have extra prep for him. I hope this was inspirational. Thanks for joining me, friends.